And now, Coach Bill Clark.
Welcome in. It's the Bill Clark Show presented by Dr. Pepper. Pat Smith along with Landrum Roberts, Molly Robinson. Coach Clark not in studio with us, out of town on business. He'll be back with us next week. But we did have an opportunity, Landrum, earlier in the week to catch up with Coach Bill Clark and get his thoughts on what you and I have experienced this week. Has just been a wild week of talking Alabama football.
Yeah, we were breaking down the season for both Alabama, Auburn, other teams around the SEC last week. Never did I think we'd be talking about not only a loss, Pat, in Tallahassee to that Florida State team, but in the fashion in which they lost. Lackluster effort at times, it looked, poor execution, a lot of questions with the coaching staff. So, yeah, there's a lot to dive into.
So we will have this conversation with Bill Clark in regards to that loss to Alabama. Impressive for Auburn going on the road in Waco. Arch Manning, his first appearance as the number one starter for the Texas Longhorns. So here's our conversation with Coach Bill Clark.
First, let's start with Friday night. Some of the questions that we had around Hugh Freeze entering season number 3 with the Auburn Tigers. They go into Waco. Jackson Arnold getting it done with his legs from what you were able to ascertain. What did you like about what you saw from Auburn on Friday?
Well, I think, one, the big thing they did exactly what fits him, which was a lot of run, play action. He took it down. But, it was all quarterback design. I say all, a lot of quarterback design run. He did have some improvisation, but really just exactly what you would want to see out of him. He's a big, strong runner. I think he led the SEC in rushing. So great job taking what he's good at and designing their offense around him.
All right, in regards to this Auburn team, did it change maybe your thinking of the ceiling for this Auburn team, or whether they won or lost in Waco, you pretty much had a pretty good feeling of where you think this team could go in regards to the rest of the season?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I would have been shocked if they lost that game. I know a lot of people thought they might, but I just didn't see it. I didn't see Baylor being good enough to beat them. We knew the strengths of Arnold. I think moving forward, the questions will be, can that be taken away? And if the box gets loaded, what can he do with the throw game? And super impressive. Obviously, you had a big play in the special teams. I think defense was okay. I think they expected probably more, and we just don't know. After game one, we don't know how good Baylor is and all those things. But I think offensively, they did exactly what they wanted to do, and obviously he was showcased.
And quickly, and then we'll move on to Alabama. But I thought that you said that you never really thought that Auburn would lose this game. I thought that this was the most important game for Auburn moving forward, because of a lot of that continuity, a lot of guys who have seen those heartbreaking losses or what just happened losses over the course of the last 2 seasons. What can that do as far as confidence, Coach, for this Auburn team, this point in the season with everything still out in front of you, but getting a win on the run? What can that do for a team?
Well, it's really so important because you just want to be 1-0. You want, especially when you've had negativity in your past, especially when you've got a new quarterback you're breaking in. So obviously, you want to get off to a great start, and then it'll be 1 week at a time. But this is the start they wanted. They did go on a road, hostile crowd. Baylor's fans always do a great job, student section. It's a hard place to play. So all those things, I'm not acting like it wasn't a big deal, because it was. I did think they were going to be the better team, and they showed it. So great start for them, and then let's see as we move forward.
All right, let's talk about the game down in Tallahassee. Really looking forward to you kind of breaking this down from a technical standpoint. You're a defensive guy at heart. Let's start with this Alabama defense. We were told going into the season that this was a potential very special group, and based on the number of missed tackles and missed assignments and things of that nature, Coach, when you were watching the game, what can you tell us? What did you see from the Alabama defense, or the things that they weren't doing?
Well, let's start with Florida State. I know that doesn't really sound, but I always start with what's your opponent doing, and I think obviously Gus is a really good play caller when he's got him a running quarterback, and I think that's what you saw. You saw a really good athletic quarterback who still can throw the ball. That feeds into everything Gus wants to do. All of his, you saw every trick play, every running back out of the backfield into the boundary, which he loves because he loves to tempo into his boundary because he's calling the plays out, as he gets out on the field as a guy that's had to defend against him back when I was at South Alabama and he was at Ark State. So I think having that quarterback made it so hard to defend. Now, what you saw at Alabama, I thought they probably maybe waited a little late to start packing the box up. When they finally started getting all those stops in the second half, They just decided to play them like what you have to do. You have to take all the running game away, play a lot of man coverage because they can run the ball. All the design quarterback run. You've got a guy behind center who you love for Florida State. Now let's look at Alabama. They ended up out on the field a lot. If we went back and look at a lot of the offensive snaps as well, weren't as physical, I think, as they would want to be, did not tackle as well as they would want to be. Obviously, you got to give Florida State credit with Coach Malzahn and obviously how he used his quarterback.
Coach, you know this going in, what Gus Malzahn likes to do, the quarterback that he has at his disposal. I'm not trying to pile on the defensive staff, but with some of the things that you saw, was it a scheme where I probably would have called something different? I know you're not trying to coach somebody else's team, but or was it just simply personnel in a one-on-one matchup that guy lost?
I think it was not really, and I always say this, the first games defensively are a nightmare. You don't know. You don't have film to look at. You don't know who the personnel is where you go. Because here's what happens. As you start seeing these offensive personnel, that offensive play caller is paid to get to the ball to those playmakers. So you start eliminating them more. Who are they? How are they going to do? Now, you had to guess, though, tons of quarterback run game. Like I said, the things that Gus Malzahn is known for, you saw it. You saw the tricks that he's known for, the back out of the backfield. But, saying you're going to defend all that and defending is two different things. But I do think once they started tightening up and just saying, we're not going to let you run the ball, we're not going to give you easy throws, you're going to have to beat me throwing over the top of me, they started getting better. I thought they wore down at the end, which is a little surprising. I understand they got a few guys out, but obviously they're very disappointed in how they played defensively.
I want to go back to in your days of knowing who you're going to play, obviously in week one, you've got the off months, the summer months. Kind of take us in that coaching mindset and like what your staff responsibilities are in regards to the tendencies, especially when you're coming up against a guy like Gus Malzahn, as you were just detailing. Like, I think a lot of people are calling their show today, Coach, and they're saying, how in the world, with months to prepare against Gus Malzahn, because this was a very typical Gus Malzahn called offense, why did Alabama look like they were shocked?
That's a good question. I think that's kind of my point. Now, granted, when you've got a guy that can really run it at quarterback, you're defending all 11. You're defending a gun form of the Army Navy. Really, it's every kind of quarterback run, every well-designed scheme that you can use your quarterback, tons of backs out of the backfield and play action and those type things. Once again, I did think they ended up out on the field probably, maybe even longer than they thought. I think the physicality is what shocked them. Guys, I'll just say this, how you practice offensively, and I put a tweet out today about defense, it just impacts your defense so much. I think Alabama looked like they were trying to be more physical offensively, but when you do not see quarterback run and you don't simulate it the right way, and once again, I'm not saying Alabama didn't, but, it's always the proof in the pudding. But, obviously the quarterback, Florida State's new quarterback is really good. I think it's so set up for what Gus likes to do. It's hard to defend, but, that's almost, you better be ready to pack the box pretty quickly because he's going to make you defend all 11.
Coach Bill Clark joining us here on the Monday recap, if you will, of what we saw in college football, presented by our friends at Donahue Chevrolet, and he joins us on the Higginbotham Hotline. Not that any of these things that Alabama did or didn't do, Coach, are not fixable moving forward, but of all of those things, what's the most maybe glaring, alarming things that you saw that trouble you, that you feel could continue to be an issue for the next 11 regular season games?
Well, I think they outscored a lot of people last year offensively with Milroe. And I think, Coach, I'm not saying their defense did not do a good job throughout the year. You're just talking about elite play, which is what is expected. And, that's the great thing about being at Alabama, and that's the tough thing. You're only expected to be the best of the best, and that's the standard. So, they're going to have to pick it up, obviously, all the way around. And sometimes – that game right there shocks you into coherence, even though I thought that's kind of the world they were living in, was that world. So they are definitely been brought into the world of, man, if we don't play every week, we can lose. And that's where they're at now.
Coach Bill Clark joins us every Monday on the program, kind of recapping the weekend's action. So outside of the Alabama-Auburn, what else in the college football world got your attention, and maybe a team or teams that maybe perhaps not getting enough credit for what they did over the weekend?
Well, of course, real quickly, Texas, Ohio State. I love Matt Patricia and the defense. Obviously we got Manning missing some easy throws and some things. I think way too much is being put on him, personally, because I think Ohio's defense was outstanding. They were very multiple. They did a great job of mixing it up. I thought Texas's defense was good as well. Obviously, we'll see as we go. LSU Clemson, what a terrific matchup. Another, what I thought was two good defenses going against each other. So that was all exciting to me. South Carolina was fun to watch. Love watching their quarterback and what they do. They're always great on special teams. Notre Dame, Miami, two good teams. Man, so many great matchups. But I'll still go back. If you've got a great championship defense, and of course we're going to score. We want to score, but that sets the tone for your whole team. And leads the way. So those great defensive efforts really excited me.
Well, great effort from you today, Coach, as we would expect. You always bring it, and bringing us this segment every single Monday throughout the college football season. Our friends, your friends there at Donahue Chevrolet in beautiful Fort Payne, Alabama.
Yeah, I mean, what's exciting about Donahue is that, they get it. They're those kind of guys that really know what their customer needs. These are friends of ours, so, they care. They do a great job. I think you can go on DonahueChevrolet.com, look at all the different deals they got going. As we said on my show last week, it was ridiculous. I won't say you guys are ridiculous again, because you're not.
Thank you,
but
Coach.
I think those deals are ridiculous.
See, even great coaches, Pat, are coachable.
Great conversation with Bill Clark as he kind of highlights the things that happened over the weekend. So one thing let's talk about, Landrum, is you were on the sideline last week at Protective Stadium as UAB got a big impressive win in week one, because I think at this point in time, UAB just wants to improve week in and week out, and that was a good first start.
Yeah, for UAB, there's so many question marks on the defensive side of the ball. Replacing that staff, you had Steve Russ, a guy with NFL experience as a player, as a coach, most recently with the Washington Commanders. Other guys that joined him, along with Sam Mills and Coach Weiss. The expectations for UAB's defense was to be better. I don't know if game one versus that offense and an outstanding quarterback in Alabama State's quarterback, Andrew Body, was a true, let's just say maybe a true test of where you want to measure this team after just 1 week. Not only just being 1 week, but the problems he is going to create for opposing defenses this season. But I thought all in all, as far as the attitude, and we talk about attitude, that's been a sentiment. We've been talking about other teams this season. Much better. The culture seems to be a lot better than it has been the previous 2 seasons under Coach Dilfer. Can't argue with the offense, though. They were efficient. 9 possessions, 8 of them in with scores. Jalen Kitna, he only missed on 5 passes, was able to find Iverson Hooks, Corey Milner, and the running game. You had newcomers like a Javon Jackson, the transfer, Decatur native, but a transfer from UTEP coming in, 166 yards, a couple of touchdowns. I thought all in all, you get out of there with a win, a lot of points, 1,034 total yards between the 2 teams, but it's win number 1 for Trent Dilfer as you enter conference play.
We talk about this all the time. I know it's an overused cliche, but it is really difficult to win a game in college football, period. And when you can get one, and you go up against one of the better quarterbacks they're probably going to see this year from Alabama State, he was impressive. All right, so let's talk about this week for UAB, because the Naval Academy, that's one of those service academies that it is so difficult to prepare for. But you and I were talking off the air. This could be a interesting matchup for UAB's defense based on UAB's new defensive coordinator, where he came from.
Yeah, you still got to have the Jimmies and Joes, and UAB has tried to shore some of those things up, and they'll get some guys back that were injured or held out last week. But Steve Russ, that's a guy, played at the Air Force Academy, last year a special assistant to the head coach, and handled the defense for the most part, knows how to defend these types of offenses, and it will be interesting to see kind of the chess match and the X's and O's that we see there in Annapolis on Saturday. But this is a Navy team that is not like a Navy team of the past. You got an offensive coordinator in Drew Cronick. I know that Coach Clark kind of documented that here on the show and some of the things that he brings, maybe some spread concepts there, but you still have the triple option. And all it takes is one miss with eye discipline, and you're looking at a long day there in Annapolis. So, yeah, that matchup in particular with the defense of UAB going up against Blake Horvath and that midshipman offense will be fascinating.
Yeah, that will be a good one coming up this weekend. You know, Global Canine Protection Group, a fine sponsor here at the Bill Clark Show presented by Dr. Pepper. You know, it's a veteran-owned and operated business and the industry leader when delivering the engineered canine screening solutions. And you saw that firsthand earlier this summer. I think really kind of by accident because you had a hot dog or something in your pocket and the dog came up and got you.
Yeah, I was outside of Truist with my wife, Dorothy. We'd gone over to take in a Braves game. The Braves won. That was one of the few Braves wins, I guess, for Braves fans that were able to celebrate. But we were there. As we were walking out, I see the handler, and then I see Gage, who I met later, had the picture made with Gage. But these animals, these dogs, the training that takes place right here in the state of Alabama, the service they provide, not only at events like that, like a Braves game or a college football game, but also at shopping malls. Got a chance to talk to one of the heads of security of shopping malls. And these dogs can detect just a firearm.
It's crazy.
In someone's pocket from great distances away, pinpoint that. Our safety, that's what's important. And these beautiful animals, they're able to do it and can't thank them enough for their support.
Yeah, it's a local company. They were founded in Opelika. And the Canine Global Protection Group, I mean, commercial, entertainment, law enforcement, and military applications. So, appreciate them being one of the original sponsors right here on the Bill Clark Show presented by Dr. Pepper. So it has been an interesting week, Landrum, for what we do day in and day out on the show on Three Man Front. And one thing's for sure, there's a lot of angst right now in Tuscaloosa and this Alabama football team. Only thing that they can do is go out and beat La Monroe. We saw something back in 2007 in which La Monroe came here and beat Nick Saban. Anything is possible now in college football, but just you personally, as you're watching the game, and I know that was a Pat Ponders question earlier this week, but is there anything for you as you're watching this Alabama game from afar, because you'll be in Annapolis, Maryland, that would make you feel like this team is maybe heading in the right direction?
There's not much, Pat, from a schematic standpoint. Louisiana Monroe, they're going to be outmatched. If we had Bryant Vincent, our friend, who's the head coach of the Warhawks on the show, he would tell you that. That's no secret. I don't know how much you're going to learn just hat on hat and what you do offensively and defensively against their concepts. But one thing I will be watching for is, do we see that effort level? Even against the Louisiana Monroe, we didn't feel like we saw maximum effort versus Florida State. Bigger name on the schedule, opponent stadium. Now you're going to go back in front of the home folks and open things up at Bryant-Denny Stadium. Do we see that? Do we potentially see Alabama struggling with this Louisiana? Because
could you imagine the crowd?
Oh my goodness!
Could you imagine the crowd if that happens?
You thought that it was chaotic on the show this week. Let them go and struggle against a Louisiana Monroe. Those are things that I'm taking away. You know, and the bad thing is for these Alabama players, well, you can get the taste out of your mouth somewhat, but nothing's going to erase what you've heard from classmates, people there on campus, your friends, your relatives, seen on social media. Nothing's going to erase what happened and transpired in that 60 minutes in Doak Campbell Stadium. Not a Louisiana Monroe win. Heck, if we fast forward to next week, I don't think a win over a Wisconsin team you dominated in Madison last year is going to make that big of a difference. The bad thing is the next litmus test, that's going to be in Athens, Georgia, against a certifiable, really good football team with elite talent, maybe arguably better talent than what you have on your sideline.
Yeah, you said it. That's the thing is, okay, whatever happened against La Monroe, and you're playing a Power 4 opponent from the Big Ten in Wisconsin, and I know everyone's like thinking, okay, well, that's not going to be an issue. It wasn't last year on the road, but it's a new team. And then you got a week off, and then you got to go to Athens, that's where all the people that are saying everything's still in front of them, like an SEC potential championship game and stuff like that, that's when it really gets real in Athens, Georgia.
And more of the criticism is centering around the coaching staff. And it all starts at the top. And I know that Kalen DeBoer, he will take responsibility for that. But can you imagine, what if Alabama does roll off 11 more wins? you're still going to have the fans, and there's still going to be that person or those people in the fan base, and rightfully so, that say, okay, well, we just saw that for 11 games. Why could you not have your team prepared when you had all offseason to prepare for that opponent, what their quarterback had said, the history you have with their offensive coordinator and Gus Malzahn, who made you look silly at times, pedestrian at times as a coach? Those are still going to be the questions. Not saying you can't fight your way out of it with wins. Wins usually cure everything, but I don't think it necessarily in this case is going to maybe clear the memories of some Alabama fans, especially the ones that made the trip to Tallahassee.
All right, so we touched on it with Bill Clark earlier on the show, but talk a little bit about Auburn, because to me, that was as impressive as going and doing what LSU did at Clemson. Was Auburn going on the road, because you've heard all the chirping during the offseason, how important it was for Hugh Freeze and this team to get out on the right foot, and you go into a hostile environment, blackout, chrome helmets, all of this kind of stuff, and you go in and you take care of business in a really good way.
Pat, you know, I have been the biggest critic of Hugh Freeze and what happened in some of those games last year, the close games, the games where you felt like Auburn had better talent, and it was situational mismanagement, what you saw in game with coaching, and that does start at the top with Hugh Freeze. Watching that game, I think Auburn fans can be refreshed that Hugh Freeze, at least for the most part, in a one-game sample size, learned from some of those mistakes, those coaching errors or mismanagement we saw last year, because you're having success, you're moving people first up front with that offensive line, much improved offensive line. You're going to see better looks, but much improved. But you continue to run the ball because it's working. And for Jackson Arnold, I know that he ran against Alabama and had that win in Norman last year playing for the Sooners. But watching him for 4 quarters and watching the way that he wanted the football, he was not running for his life. He was running for yards. He was creating. His field vision was great. We really haven't seen him open up the arm. We saw a couple of the long passes, the one to Simmons and the one to Cam Coleman down the far right sideline. But we truly haven't seen that. And to have those threats on the outside, his ability to run the football, that is going to create headaches for defensive coordinators for the remaining opponents.
If there's one area, and I know you're being kind of picky here, because a win is a win, and we based it on the fact that Alabama didn't do anything very well in Tallahassee. If there's one area, I think probably they go back to the film and they said, okay, we got to shore this up before we get to SEC play in a couple weeks against Oklahoma, and that's got to be the defense, because the defense was supposed to be that area that a lot of folks go, you know what, that's going to be a shutdown defense. Not saying it can't be in the future, but at least for week 1, that was an area I'm sure DJ Durkin had plenty of tape to point out to his guys, this is where we need to get better.
Yeah, and it mainly centered around the secondary. And I know that Hugh Freeze, he made some comments about maybe not having that quickest first step in coverage or being a little sluggish at times, and maybe it had something to do with maybe preparation, their schedule, or maybe just the heat, because as I understand it, it was a very muggy Texas-like night in Waco last Friday. But yeah, the defensive backs, that is from people that I trust that have been around practice. They said these defensive backs, they're going to blow people away. I still think they can, and I think they're a lot better there and on that side of the ball than they were one season ago. But you did have some issues. Michael Trigg, the transfer from Ole Miss, he was a problem running across the middle. You're going to have to get that shored up, because you're going to see other offenses in the SEC try to attack Auburn that way. But Keldrick Falk, what we expected when he had to have that big sack and be the nuisance that he is and the record that he is in the backfield, we saw that big play in getting the sack late in that ball game. But you know what? You love things to work on after a 2-touchdown win on the road against a formidable Big 12 opponent to start the season.
No doubt. It was a formidable Power 4 opponent from the Big 12, no question about it. Smart Bank is another fine sponsor here on the Bill Clark Show, presented by Dr. Pepper. They deliver exceptional client service. You just need to go to smartbank.com. You hear Bill talking about it every single week on this program. He's on the board of advisors, I believe, for Smart Bank. So get by and see them, or just simply go to their website, smartbank.com. Landrum, we just briefly mentioned LSU. Impressive win. Going to the other Death Valley, kind of shut those folks up in South Carolina as they come away with a huge victory, not only for them in the rest of the season, but kind of that psyche for Brian Kelly, because we've seen how fired up he's been this week.
Yeah, it's not always truly representative when you see some of these teams that we project to be elite or possibly college football playoff contenders, even national title contenders in week 1. But I felt like we got a really, really good picture with both of those teams. I think that Clemson is every good as they can be, and they believe that staff believes that they can be. Klubnik, you got to give credit to Blake Baker and the defensive side of the ball for LSU and what they were able to do. That was kind of my big takeaway, Pat, was we remember a couple of years ago where you have a Jaden Daniels running that offense and they're setting records and nobody can stop them. The problem was they were a sieve on the defensive side. Remember the shootout that they had in Oxford in that 52-49 game? That is not this LSU team. It appears that the transfer portal and paying all of that money, $18 million plus dedicated to those guys in this last portal class, making immediate impacts for LSU. They're well-rounded. They got a defense to complement an offense with a veteran quarterback in Nussmeier. He didn't have to be spectacular the other night. I think that LSU is for real. Absolutely put them in as a SEC title contender. I'm booking them for the college football playoff. I don't see there's any way, especially with that on their resume, that they lose more than 2 games in the regular season. So, Brian Kelly, your job is safe for now.
It is. And in my opinion, of the 4 teams when we left Atlanta, and I'm talking about the SEC media days, that we said, okay, Texas, Georgia, Alabama, LSU, of those 4 teams, without a doubt, in my opinion, LSU walked away out of week 1 as the best team. If you're doing a power rankings of those 4 teams, I'm using air quotes, that would be those teams that we talked about the most in Atlanta of being the upper echelon of the conference.
And I think part of that, Pat, and you make a good point, but part of that is because of the experience that you had with those 2 quarterbacks in that game, whether it be Caden Klubnik or whether it be Garrett Nussmeier, as opposed to another game that we're going to be talking about that happened in the shoe with 2 young quarterbacks, and how much of that was let's see if the defense can win this one. Let's take a conservative approach on the offensive side of the ball and not put our young gunslinger in harm's way. That wasn't always the case last Saturday, but it seemed that way as a viewer.
No doubt about it. Webb Concrete and Building Materials, another fine sponsor here on the Bill Clark Show. 7 locations in Alabama: Heflin, Oxford, Pell City, Center, Roanoke, Birmingham, and Homewood. So get by and see those great people at Webb Concrete and Building Materials. You just mentioned it, partner, in regards to what happened up in Columbus, Ohio. Julian Sand, the former Alabama football player, transferred to Ohio State. He's the starting quarterback for the Buckeyes. You got Arch Manning from college football royalty. He was handed the reins over to the Lamborghini that's known as the Texas Longhorns. Your feelings on Arch, and is there a pause in regards to what he can be this year?
We were trying to be respectful. If we want to take people back to where did he go? Newman, the high school there in the state of Louisiana. We had our national recruiting analyst on. I cannot recall their name at the time, and basically paraphrasing what they said, comparing him, and I believe it was Eli Holstein who he was comparing him to at that time, an Alabama quarterback commit from the state of Louisiana. But in essence, he said Arch Manning is good, but maybe getting some more accolades, more than are deserved, just based on his family name. I think Arch Manning's a good college quarterback, but overhype, that's understating it in the buildup. And we kept asking the question on the show on 3-Man Front, what if Arch isn't that great? He was not great on Saturday. Their offense was not dynamic. A lot of that had to do with Ohio State's defense. But in the difference with Alabama and this Texas team does have a defense. Alabama has one, but this Texas defense has a chance to be elite.
It's pretty interesting because when you talk about Clemson losing to LSU, everyone believes that Clemson will rebound and be just fine. You got Texas losing at Ohio State. They believe, obviously, with the defense traveling, they're going to be fine. Completely different animal in conversation we're having this week in regards to Alabama, a team that was preseason top 10. They're barely hanging on the top 25. That number's not going to change unless they were to lose and they fall out of the top 25. Not a lot of room for them to improve until they get to that magical weekend in Athens, Georgia. And you know that those folks will definitely want to give a little payback from what happened last year in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, no doubt. When are we going to get Alabama's best? Do we get Alabama's best this season? You certainly hope so if you're an Alabama fan, but they're going to have their best coming up in that game in Sanford Stadium, because there is no doubt that guy wearing the visor with the bowl cut on the other sideline, he does not forget, especially what happened in the first half of last year's game at Bryant-Denny.
And especially he pulled an old Saban and started ridiculing the student body for not showing up to their football game against Marshall.
That's right. The passing of the torch.
Oh, yeah. Just
from daddy to
here's the playbook.
To Kirby. Yeah. Maybe Kirby's the new daddy of the SEC.
Yeah. This has been the Bill Clark Show presented by Dr. Pepper and Buffalo Rock. Ran into Jimmy Lee the other night at the Coach Safely Foundation banquet. And Jimmy Lee does so much for not only the local community, but also in the world of college football and the sponsorship of all these great shows. So Coach Bill Clark will be back with us in studio next week. For Molly Robinson, my partner Landrum Roberts, I'm Pat Smith, wishing all of you a great week, and we'll see you next time on the Bill Clark Show, presented by Dr. Pepper, Buffalo Rock.
This has been the Bill Clark Show, presented by Dr. Pepper.